Are enchanters currently underrated in League of Legends? Hi there, my name is T1NCR, Tinker for short, and I wanted to dive a little deeper into the enchanter archetype. Before we begin, this is from my perspective, so if you do disagree, I'd love to hear it. Discussing things is how we develop, and I'm always grateful for feedback and other points of view. To start with, enchanters offer some amazing late game assurance. League right now leans heavily into scaling and late game teamfights, and that's exactly where enchanters shine. They keep your team alive through extended fights with consistent sustain. A big part of that strength comes from their itemization. Items like Echoes of Helia and Moonstone Renewer work incredibly well together, letting your team survive through long drawn-out fights. Let me show you a few more examples. Take Ardent Censer for instance. It grants bonus attack speed and on-hit damage to allies you shield or heal. This makes it ideal for auto-attack heavy carries like Jinx or Kog'Maw. Enchanters already favour scaling, so pairing them with a hyper-scaling ADC makes it a perfect match. And even if you're not with a classic hyper carry, the bonus damage still adds a lot of value in teamfights. Another excellent option is Dawncore. It gives you AP, healing and shielding power, and mana regen. Nothing flashy on the surface, but the passive is where it shines. It boosts your healing and shielding even further and gives you bonus AP based on your mana regen. This makes it a fantastic third or fourth item, especially after building Echoes and Moonstone and picking up your support item upgrades. All of these items sit around the 2.5k gold mark, and the value they return is incredibly high for that cost. Compare that to engage supports, which are by far the most popular pick in the role right now. Their items are fine, things like Locket, Zeeks and Thornmail bring useful utility, but the issue is after these core items, engage support starts hitting much more expensive price points, making it harder for them to consistently scale into the late game. Another thing worth mentioning, outside of level 3 and 6, levels matter less for enchanters than they do for other roles. Most of your strength comes from items rather than base stats, and because of that, you're less reliant on XP and can move around the map and support your team early. Now, enchanters have their drawbacks. First, and probably the most noticeable, is that they can be quite dull to play, offering limited opportunities for skill expression. Games often hinge on the same few actions: shielding, healing, repositioning, rinse, repeat. While you're performing your role well, it can feel more repetitive compared to more mechanically involved or aggressive roles. This brings us to the second point. They rely heavily on their teammates. Enchanters work best when their team understands what they're doing. In solo queue, however, this is not the case. Trust me, I'm very aware. As an enchanter, you generally lack agency. You can't force fights or pick off opponents. Your strength lies in supporting other players on your team, which can be incredibly rewarding when it works, but pretty frustrating when it doesn't. Now, if enchanters are so strong right now, why don't we see them anymore? A lot of it comes down to how the game and the player base has evolved. There was a time when enchanters were the default support pick. Champions like Janna, Soraka and Lulu dominated the bot lanes because fights were slower. ADCs were the win condition, and teamfights were the centerpiece of most games. But as metas shifted towards faster paced games, early skirmishing, jungle carry picks and roaming supports became more valuable. Enchanters struggled to keep up with those metas. They lacked hard engage, they couldn't roam as effectively, and couldn't always protect teammates from burst heavy comps that wanted to dive and delete backlines. Add in champions like Pyke, Nautilus and Leona rising in popularity, and suddenly playing an enchanter felt risky. One misstep and you're dead. It didn't help that solo queue tends to favour playmaking. People want to carry from every role, and enchanters don't usually fit that mindset. But lately, with longer fights, weaker Grievous Wounds and more scaling picks coming back into the meta, enchanters have quietly made a comeback. They just aren't being picked as often because they don't feel as dominant or flashy as they once did. One of the most infamous periods for enchanters came during the Ardent Censer meta, back in Worlds 2017. If you weren't around then, it was a patch where Ardent Censer became incredibly overtuned. It gave attack speed, on-hit healing and strong shield synergy, and enchanters could rush it by 7 or 8 minutes into the game. Suddenly, champions like Janna, Lulu and Soraka weren't just good, they were must picks. Teams would often draft around hyperscaling ADCs like Tristana or Kog'Maw, stick an enchanter on their side and just play for the late game. It led to a slow scaling focus game, and honestly, the competitive scene got a little stale. Riot eventually nerfed the item and shifted the meta back towards engaged supports and early playmaking. But it showed just how powerful enchanters can be when the meta leans in their favour. And I think right now we're starting to see some echoes of that, just in a much more balanced way. Something you might be wondering is, which champions have I been playing to form these opinions? Here are 3 that have really stood out to me recently. First up, Melio. Melio's entire kit is built around keeping teammates alive. His W and E offer consistent healing and shielding, while his R removes crowd control and turns fights around instantly. Even his Q has value. It can interrupt dashes or cancel key engage abilities. Melio's been my go-to enchanter lately, just because of how consistently he delivers value in fights. Next up, Sona. I think Sona has been overlooked for a long time, especially since Seraphine kind of overshadowed her during her initial release. But after a mini rework, Sona has incredible sustain, especially with the amount of ability haste she can stack through her passive. More recently, I've been seeing people run Bloodsong over Dreammaker, and honestly, it works. The synergy with her empowered autos, especially if your ADC is ready for a fight, gives you some really solid options. And last up, Ivern. The wise mystical tree himself. While he's more traditionally a jungler, if you take what I said earlier about gold efficiency and team utility and multiply it by 1,000, that's Ivern. He generates gold from camps, gets access to support items, and of course, Daisy is an absolute menace in fights. I genuinely think Ivern is one of the most underrated champions in the entire game right now. So, are enchanters underrated right now? I'd say they're definitely in a good spot. Maybe not flashy, maybe not exciting to play for 10 games in a row, but undeniably effective in the right hands. They scale well, they're gold efficient, and they bring consistent value to teamfights, even when they're behind. That said, they're heavily reliant on teammates, and you don't always get to make your own impact. Enchanters give you the tools to win, but whether that happens often depends on who you're supporting. I would love to hear your thoughts too. Are you playing enchanters at the moment? Do you think they're slept on or maybe even overrated? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear my perspective. Whether or not you agree, it's been fun to break this down. I've been T1NCR Tinker for short, and I'll see you all next time.